Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. The government has moved for detention on serious risk of flight and also danger to the community under 3142 F1B because the maximum penalty of the count 1 and count 2 is death or life imprisonment, and serious risk of flight under 3142 F2A. On the latter, I note at the start that there is a presumption of detention in this case on the basis of risk of flight under 3142 E3B because counts 2, 5, and 7 allege a violation of 18 United States Code 924C. Ultimately, count 2 is 924J1, but built in the allegation of count 2 as a violation of 924C. So there's a presumption that that there's a risk of non-appearance in this case. And Your Honor, I proffer to you at the start that all of the factors under 3142G weigh in favor of detention in this case. I'll just go through them in order. Under 3142G1, the nature and circumstances of this offense involve a crime of violence. It's a heinous crime. It's a murder in count 1 and assault with a deadly weapon, 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. One person was murdered, Mr. Weekly, who's set forth in the indictment. Victim 1 and victim 2 were also shot during the course of this murder. Mr. Weekly was fired at least 38 times in broad daylight, 4:26 p.m. on August 4th, standing in line outside of a business on Oak Street. Victim 1 and victim 2 were each also shot a number of times throughout the course of that assault. So the nature and circumstances of this offense are a crime of violence, and crimes of violence in furtherance of a racketeering enterprise that's identified and described in the indictment as a racketeering enterprise that engages in acts of violence, including murder and assault. The weight of the evidence against Mr. Offord specifically is substantial. So Mr. Offord purchased a vehicle that was used in this murder and assault on or about July 28th from a dealership in the Chicagoland area. During a post-arrest interview, Mr. Offord acknowledged that there were pictures of him at the dealership standing next to the car that was used in the murder. Mr. Offord identified himself in the photos and the vehicle that was used as his vehicle. Mr. Offord acknowledged that it was his signature on the purchasing documents for the vehicle. And I'll come back to this part when we get to history and characteristics of Mr. Offord, but Mr. Offord made some statements in the financing application for that vehicle that were not true with respect to his employment. And so days later, the dealership reached out to Mr. Offord to return the vehicle, which ultimately using the vehicle in this murder and the assault of victims 1 and 2. So continuing on with the strength of the evidence, Mr. Offord acknowledged that there were still shots from a video that was taken. There was video that's relevant to this offense charge on August 4th, before the murder, after the murder, during the murder. Before the murder, Mr. Offord acknowledged again that it was him in those standing next to the vehicle that was used in the murder. I'm proffering now. Mr. Offord and others were congregating in the minutes before the murder, traveling to downtown. The vehicles that were used, including Mr. Offord's, were captured on CPD pod cameras, on CPD plate readers. The plate reader clearly identified the license plate as the vehicle registered to Mr. Offord, which he had purchased on or about July 28th, tracking from that location to down in the Gold Coast where this murder and assault took place.